pilot, maybe a pilot for a new season, and to be involved with hopefully the continuation of Q. So we shall see if ChatGPT in that regards brings me some luck.
Amazing. What about the threat? I mean, isn't there like as college students like started writing papers using ChatGPT, law students, and it's like a word. How do you censor? Like, can you write things or is it ChatGPT?
Actually, AI is
Okay,
also
that's 60 seconds of chillism. Now, I think at some point you have to have some self-reflection. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to come here and to listen to these meaningless conversations?
And then you can start giving it different
worth it?
prompts like,
That was my
write it
question.
at a PhD level. Okay, now rewrite it at a 5th grade education level. Now rewrite it, and you can start doing these edits and rewrites, and then eventually what will happen is you can get it so far removed from what its original AI instincts were, and you could even give it examples of in the voice of, write it the way Andrew Dice Clay would write it the way that Shakespeare would write it.
Okay, that's 60 seconds.
And when you start doing that and playing with
now,
it,
I think
you can probably have to deceive some of these plagiarist things.
Is it worth it to come here and to listen to these meaningless conversations?
I think they would have trouble picking that up. But most people are just lazy. They're just going to put in a prompt and whatever it spits out. The one that's pretty obvious is if you go to ChatGPT, it really likes it doesn't like commas as much as it likes dashes. And so when you see the double dash, you see it like that is a telltale sign that, because nobody writes like that. Nobody on planet Earth writes like that. It's almost like they bake that in as like a first line of defense to be able to see if somebody used ChatGPT or not.
That's interesting because I noticed even like when you put typing in the chat here on Clubhouse or in the email, where let's face it, like autocorrect is was like ChatGPT in its diapers. With all the word suggestion, like you start typing like, hey, like Google started this, right? You get a message, you get an email from somebody. Google is reading the email message because it's offering you prompt, it's offering you a variety of prompts to just choose instead of having to actually use your own brain and use your own words. It'll be like, yeah, sounds great, thumbs up, or oh, sorry to hear that. But I've also noticed the one thing that stands out with autocorrect is commas and calling you out when you're not using commas appropriately. But that's probably the least of our worries with AI.
Yeah, so one of the outlets that I write for, we have a problem with AI there, and there's nothing we can do about it. Our IT team has told us, and the lawyer for the company has said there's nothing we can do. There is some sort of AI system being used by a company, and I think they traced it to Russia or Ukraine, I'm not sure, Poland, where they're copying all of my articles, and I'm sure probably some other writers for this outlet, they're copying all of my articles and republishing them on their own website as if they're writing it, as if I write for them. And my managing editor is furious, but there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. And it is an AI, it's not a human that is pulling the article and copying and pasting and republishing. No, we have determined that it is some sort of AI system that is scouring our site and pulling some of the best stories, and they just so happen to be most of my stories, since I'm the one that covers the entertainment news for this site. And so, yeah, it's pretty, I don't know, it's, dare I say, disturbing, but I guess this is what we have to deal with in this AI world, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Imitation's the highest form of flattery, but that's creepy, yeah.
So let me ask a question. Some of you are very concerned about AI. I'm just wondering, if you think we're already living in anarchy, I mean, is it, the person on the highway, expressway, who shoots you, or the person that stabs you on the train, or, what's more dangerous, society today in America or AI?
I think AI could be. I mean, AI as it stands right now is not dangerous, with the exception of some of these deep fakes, because it's getting hard to discern what's real and what's not real, especially if these deep fakes are used to damage someone's reputation or image. But I would like to think that the population is aware, especially if you're on the computer a lot, and you're aware of AI and deepfakes. I would like to think that people are able to use some kind of deductive skills to determine what's real and what's not. But as AI gets more savvy, it might get difficult to figure out what's real and fake, especially as it relates to news sources, right? In healthy debates earlier today, someone noted, what if in the near future there's a presidential campaign and someone uses a deep fake to destroy the image or reputation or the campaign of a presidential candidate they don't like, and it really impacts their voter base, or how the population resonates with that candidate. So that can definitely be dangerous.
And I don't know why you're talking about this in the future. I mean, our president held up a deep fake with MS-13 and deported a person with it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
This is here.
We also had a former president arrested by the FBI.
So I don't know, John. I mean, I don't think it's as dangerous now. I still think the person on the subway with the gun or the knife is more dangerous than AI. But I predict as AI advances and as these language models get more evolved, then yeah, I could see us living in a near future where the AI could be more dangerous than the criminal on the street ready to snatch you up.
I mean, in Chicago this weekend, 30 people were murdered by gunfire, 250 shot. It's like that every weekend. Why, as a society, do we tolerate that?
How do we not?
You could apprehend criminals.
Yeah, I blame our politicians, John. I think we just need to elect better officials. Listen, I live in Chicago too, and the mayor down there. Well, I live outside of Chicago, so the mayor down there, as you know, is just a disaster. So, in my opinion, it's just we have to elect better officials. And a lot of these liberals. I mean, look at California for instance. I lived there for 20 years, but I got the hell out just in the nick of time. California has this. I don't know if it's still like this, but in some areas of California, you own a store. You just have to let them snatch and grab. You can't stop them. You can't apprehend them for stealing your shit. Let them go. I remember that video that went viral where a store owner confronted Gavin Newsom about these laws. He gave kind of a laissez-faire attitude about it. A lot of these Democratic-run cities, they want criminals on the street. They want to let them out of jail early. You can't afford bail. Oh, no problem. Just let them back on the street, right? So I think it really comes down to the elected officials. They want lawlessness. They want criminals on the street. They want the people to be, armed, and then they want to threaten to take their guns away. So I blame the politicians, sir. I don't think the people want this.
So if Donald Trump takes over Washington, D.C., you're all for that, correct?
I mean, well, what do you mean take over? He's the president.
I'm saying that he gets rid of the mayor and he takes over the city security-wise. There's no more lawlessness. There's no more rampant homelessness. No more drug dealing. No more shootings. No more robberies. He actually forms a security perimeter and takes care of the situation with force.
Yeah, I would have no problem with that.
And I hear you, and I hear your frustration there, but I have to push back because, the mayor meets with, generally most police chiefs, right, have one boss. It's the mayor. But the mayor, of course, doesn't make any of the laws. In fact, it's actually far more up to the DA. DAs don't make laws, but they are the arbiter of enforcing what laws and what cases to pursue or not. Again, back to California, which is why even bleeding liberal heart San Francisco pulled their DA, did a recall because of the frustrations of the smash and grabs and such. So, it's a bit hyperbolic to say like, oh, all these lefts, runs, mayoral cities that are leaning left are all for wild, wild west, and like, every to each, every, good luck, don't get killed. It's a little extreme because they are also, they're also, you have to look at the population. Like, again, Chicago is a great example. Let me ask you this. Let's say if you had a Republican mayor in Chicago, how is a Republican mayor going to bring down, what are they averaging now? 500 homicides a year? Are you just going to add like 100,000 more cops? Like, what would a Republican mayor do differently?
Well, you know what? I sit here and I think about Indiana. I'll let you go, Hakima. Hakima, you tell me if you agree with this. Because, I've told you I live quite close to the border of Indiana, which is a red state. Okay? And in my opinion, those boys in red, they don't play. I rarely hear about, I'm not saying that there's no crime in Indiana, but I feel like people know you don't go to Indiana with that BS, right? Because they're not going to put up with that N-word shit, okay? And I say N-word, and it applies to everybody, black, white, that ratchet shit. So I'd like to think if there was a Republican mayor, or if Chicago was a red state, red city, or we were a red state, I would like to think that they would reel it in a little bit more.
But how? That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm all for it. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm always fascinated. What would Republicans do differently? And I could care less who gets the job done. Nobody wants homicides, but we're talking about cities like Chicago where cops know they're going to get shot at, right? Like,
that's not true. Cops don't know that. People are not shooting at cops in Chicago.
In Chicago?
Yeah, in Chicago.
They are in Oakland.
Violence is down in Chicago. Murders are down in Chicago. But to Na's point about Indiana, Gary, Indiana is a violent place where they...
Well, Gary definitely is an exception. Sorry, go ahead.
East Chicago, Indiana, you know what I'm saying? Indianapolis, South Bend, there are several cities in Indiana that are violent where, there's no answer to it. But, and a lot of the problems in Chicago stem from Indiana.
That's the thing.
Because people buy guns in Indiana and come right over the border and sell them. Because it's hard to buy guns in Illinois, particularly in Chicago. So all the guns are coming from Indiana. So they act like Indiana is like got some solution. They really don't.
Well, here's my thing. Let me tell you something about Chicago. Chicago is easy on every corner, and yet they can't solve one crime, right? Which is a big trick bag. I feel like Chicago, were they part of the fun police narrative? I feel like if it was a Republican red city, we wouldn't have. And Hakima, I'm not saying every liberal leader in Chicago is about to fund police, but there was that narrative at the height of George Floyd. You had some saying it. Just this past year, how many town hall meetings did we have of Chicago voters expressing their anger at the mayor and the governor over the immigration issue? I feel like if Republicans were in control, that wouldn't be a thing. We wouldn't have, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Republicans are perfect, because I don't identify as Republican, right? And I know, I remember during Trump's last election, how some of my family members were gravely impacted by some social services that were cut because of Republican leadership or Republican policies. Specifically, I have family members that have children who have disabilities, and some of those programs they relied on to help their children, and they lost access to some of those resources. But I just think as it relates to law and order, conservatives seem to be more pro law and order than liberal leaders tend to be. And again, I'm not saying that applies to all liberal leaders.
Well, I would also say that it's hard to know what would really take place, because in large cities you don't see Republicans as mayors. It would be interesting to see large cities ran by Republicans, we do have examples, a few examples of where this is true. You could go back to Rudy Giuliani, I think is probably the best example of what you're talking about, where better outcomes happen. But the challenges in a big city are just different than in the suburbs and different from rural communities. And I think it's interesting that in a big city, you tend to see Democrats being favored, and in the rural areas, you definitely see the Republicans being favored. And then in the suburbs, that tends to be the most purple that you're going to get. And then depending on how close your suburb is to the big city, it might lean blue. And if your suburb is leaning more towards the rural area, it might lean a little more red. But that's the thing I think we should think about, is instead of just thinking of red or blue or this state, that state, I think we should really hone in on the different policies that are necessary for governing. The wants, the needs of the people in these different areas are different. Yes, everybody wants to be safe, but the threats and the challenges that you're faced with, they're just different. And that's why I think we should more thoughtfully move towards what would be the best set of laws to govern a rural area. And by the way, not all rural areas are the same, and not all big cities are the same. We need to examine the unique challenges. There's a through line, though, if you have less tolerance for violent crime, you're going to see less violent crime. And the evidence of that is, a lot of people hate the 94 crime bill, and I think that there was definitely some mistakes made with it. But if you look at the facts that 1990, 1991, 1992, 1993, that 4-year period, the most violent period in American history outside of the Civil War. And so those violent crime rates were insane. In fact, today when people talk about crime rates, we're actually 50% lower than the highs that we saw in that 4-year period during the early 90s. And then the 94 crime bill comes, and then you see a steady decline ever since.
Giuliani had a plan, he's disgraced now, but he was called America's mayor, maybe after 9/11. But he knew he couldn't do it by himself, and he organized the courts, the police, and other agencies,
unions,
as a group effort.
If I see mysterious,
and people welcomed it. I mean, New York was as bad as it is now.
Everybody
took
does.
over, and he made profound change.
The biggest change was, and to be fair, I think he's New York's mayor. I think any mayor that happened to be in New York when 9/11 happened would be
I don't know.
America's mayor.
You give me
But his biggest impact was, I would actually love to see what the day-to-day violent crime
Look at you, you're bigger than me.
before his watch, then under his watch, because I know his biggest impact was Rico going after John Gotti and organized crime.
Who gets his enemy to trust him?
Even just cleaning up, the mob was running. I believe it was district. He cleaned that up. He was like the first mayor, I think, to really take up
Crew's taking steam tomorrow.
organized crime. I forgot what point in his career he completely lost his fucking mind, but just goes to show.
He did have a multifaceted approach, and I think that you could ask anyone who lived through that era, it was a profound change. It wasn't just statistics, and maybe it happened.
7 cards start. Let me ask you something. You ever dream about this game? I do. Every night. Nightmares.
And a lot of folks think that also, the cops can only do so much, right? It's like, the cop can corral the cops when somebody says, fine, let's keep the Democratic command on the cities on the microscope. Corral is right? You can lead the criminal to the jail, but you can't make him stay. That's up to the DA, who then has to deal with the judge, who has the power, of course, to release them on their own recognizance, release them on mercy, whatever it is. That's why I always thought it amazing when you get those flyers to vote for your local judges coming up on elections. Is anyone really knows anything about most of the judges? There are some like folks that do deep dives. They will do a history of judges' records and show you in bold print how many known offenders they've let go for whatever reasons, politically or otherwise, to get reelected. But it's it's not all up to the cops in the street to get it done. That is for absolute sure.
And I don't know that this is the solution, but there are some big fund of knowledge that thinks appointed judges would be better than elected.
Appointed judges are better than elected. We should also not elect like TAs and stuff. In my opinion, I think when you get low enough in the chain of offices, like I grew up in North Carolina. We elected like the water commissioner. Like nobody knows what the water commissioner is doing. Like you have to have. You should elect executives and a legislative body, and at some point, just because life is too busy, turn over that kind of oversight of the water commissioner to them. It makes a whole lot more sense.
So wait, I'm sorry, Brent. You said we should not. Who should be appointed, not elected?
He's talking, but this applies to a lot of like lower offices. Pennsylvania's got a weird system where you have a lot of like really low level positions that any other state would simply have appointed into a committee, and they would look for people that have knowledge, skill, or ability in a particular area. And but in Pennsylvania, you put yourself on the ballot, sometimes unopposed, you end up winning, and you know nothing about the job that you're about to do. I know about this because the Libertarian Party, when I was a part of it, we organized around that, and in one election got over 150 Libertarians elected. That was in 2021, and it exploited a few things. Number one, the major parties needed to declare their candidacy before the minor parties, so that you could find elections where there's only one opponent, or find elections where you're completely unopposed. And then once you get on the ballot, if the major parties, after that period is over, if they want to run, they would have to be a write-in, and then they're in a huge disadvantage. The other thing is the filing fees are very, very low in Pennsylvania, and so and then the final piece is just the fact of some of the low-level positions that you have. It just created a hell of a lot more opening